Good evening and welcome to the Virtual Houses of Worship Security Program hosted by FEMA Region 2 Individual and Community Preparedness Program and the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. My name is Allison Albright and I am the Regional Preparedness Liaison for FEMA Region 2. I am going to provide a few technical considerations before we begin. Today's proceedings are being recorded and captioned. The archived event will be available on the FEMA website in the coming weeks. You should hear audio through your computer speakers, so please ensure that your volume is turned up and your speaker icon is green so you may hear the proceedings accordingly. We will have a question and answer session after the presentation concludes. You'll see a Q&A pod on the right-hand side. Please feel free to submit your questions about the subject matter there, and time permitting, we'll do our best to answer them. Finally, the PowerPoint presentation from today will be available for you to download in the file share pod as a PDF at the end of the presentation. You can click on the file and download it using the download button. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Loretta Taylor from the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness to start today's proceedings.
Thank you, Allison. Good evening, and thank you all for attending our virtual Houses of Worship seminar today. My name is Loretta Taylor, and I am the State Training and Exercise Coordinator with the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. We have a lot in store for you this evening, so I would like to briefly share today's agenda. After the opening remarks from our Deputy Director, Eric Tusarzik, and the Bergen County Prosecutor, Mark Nisella, we will be informed of OHSP's interfaith resources, followed by our federal partners, FEMA, and the Department of Homeland Security. After that, we will have an opportunity to learn about cybersecurity considerations as they relate to houses of worship. And finally, we will be answering your questions from the Q&A section, followed by closing remarks and adjourn. So now I'm going to introduce our Acting Deputy Director, Eric Tusarzik. Eric Tusarzik was appointed to his current position at OHS&P in March 2016. Most recently, Mr. Tusarzik served in Pennsylvania's Office of General Counsel. In that role, he was assigned as Deputy Chief Counsel to the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency and the Office of the State Fire Commissioner. Mr. Tusarzik has previously served at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security as Director for Intergovernmental Programs during the inception of many departmental programs that continue to support state, local, and national security. Subsequent to his tenure at DHS, Mr. Tusarzik was the Director of Preparedness Policy at the White House Homeland Security Council. In this role, he created and coordinated policy that supported national preparedness initiatives to help build a foundation of resiliency across the nation. After his service at the White House, Mr. Tusarzik returned to the private sector as a consultant for multiple private sector and governmental organizations, including the U.S. Department of Defense. As a consultant for PricewaterhouseCoopers early in his career, Mr. Tusarzik assisted commercial clients with risk mitigation, data analytics, and technology innovation in the financial and consumer product sectors. After PwC, his workforce on business and analytics, including technology integration and risk management of international and domestic supply chains for a NASDAQ-traded organization. Mr. Tusarzik holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science from Arcadia University and a Juris Doctor degree from the Catholic University of America. So without further delay, Acting Deputy Director Eric Tusarzik will provide opening remarks.
Thanks, Loretta. I appreciate that introduction. I didn't realize it was going to be the long bio, so I apologize to folks, but it was very nice of you to articulate all of that. Most importantly, I want to welcome everyone to the Houses of Worship program. This is a program that all of the thanks really goes to OHSP's team, the federal team, and all our partners our local partners, and in particular tonight, the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, because there's a lot of work that goes into these and a lot of resources that are brought to bear. And a lot of the results that come from this are very positive. And so I hope all of you will take from this the tools and resources that are presented and use those because the folks you have around you tonight from all of our teams are very, very good. I wanted to let folks know, it's been an interesting year for everyone. OHSP at the state level has remained fully operational, albeit in somewhat of a remote capability. We've seen some unprecedented situations as we've all dealt with over the last 18 months or so. But we continue to do what it is we do at the state level while adapting our strategies to counter that evolving threat landscape. So we're still highly and have a sharpened focus on our counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and preparedness missions, of which this falls squarely in that preparedness mission and cybersecurity to really make sure we're bringing resources to the communities. And of all our communities, the houses of worship, our faith-based communities remain a high priority in the state. We don't have to tell you about the challenges that are faced by the various faith-based communities. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything and working together to enhance and really raise the capabilities of everyone that are dealing with the security challenges that are unfortunately ever present in our society. So as I mentioned, tonight's presentation is truly a culmination of a long and tremendous amount of effort. We are lucky enough to have great partners like the Prosecutor's Office that we're able to put a few of these on a year. There is very valuable information. And so again, I would encourage you to take advantage of what's presented. And the last piece I'll mention is tonight, for those of you that might not have been a part of this before, keep in mind that tonight's presentation is really just the beginning of the conversation. Please take away from this the context, whether it be the federal partners, the state partners, partners from the prosecutor's office, and make sure if you need stuff, we're all here to lend a helping hand and to not be shy about asking questions here or following up afterwards and asking for resources that we can be helpful with. So with that, again, Loretta, I thank you for the introduction. I would like to introduce a great partner of ours at the state level and thank him for his partnership in this program, as well as his team that have been extremely helpful to our team at the state. And so I'll introduce and turn it over to Bergen County Prosecutor Mark Musella. Prosecutor, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Loretta. Good evening. I am honored to be here tonight and to support the great work of the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness and everything that they do for our communities here in Bergen County. I want to thank you, Director Duran, for the invitation to join you here this evening. Bergen County is a county of nearly 1 million residents, and you can imagine that Homeland Security, counterterrorism, and anticipating large-scale attacks is a daily mission for our agency, the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. I want to just highlight a few of our programs and partnerships in this effort. Since the beginning of this year, our Intelligence and Counterterrorism Unit has conducted more than 20 security assessments of houses of worship and religious schools in Bergen County. The assessments are free, they are valid for 3 years, and they make the entities eligible for the nonprofit grant program. We coordinate with religious communities and partner with local police departments to conduct the assessments. Over the last 3 years, we have conducted nearly 92 assessments of houses of worship and religious schools. We are proud that Bergen County houses of worship and schools have been able to improve security and safety by receiving grant funding and by implementing our recommendations. This year, 59 applicants from Bergen County have put in for the 2021 nonprofit grant program. Our Intelligence and Counterterrorism Unit constantly monitors national and local events to make sure we are anticipating activity and that we are prepared for anything that may impact our county, our residents, our communities, or our partners. And we coordinate with both local enforcement partners, as well as private and religious security directors to ensure that we are covering all the needs of our community. In addition, our intelligence and counterterrorism team, in addition to our intelligence and counterterrorism team, the Bergen County Rapid Deployment Team, or RDT, is very active at special events, transportation hubs, religious facilities, and events and during heightened times of alert. The RDT is a cooperative effort of the 72 law enforcement agencies in Bergen County and an example of the shared commitment to safety that is required in a county as large, diverse, and as close to New York City as Bergen County is. We have a great relationship with the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, and our staff works closely with the office to serve our community. I commend our county liaisons, Lieutenant Page and Detective Chowdhury, for their professionalism and commitment to public safety. They help us keep Bergen County safe, and I thank them. And let me close by thanking Director Maples for his service. We wish Jared well and all the best in your future endeavors. Congratulations to Director Duran. We look forward to our continued work with you and your staff. And again, I thank you for having me tonight, and I thank you for everything the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness does for our communities here in Bergen County. Thank you, Eric. And again, back to you, Loretta. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark Mazzella. We definitely value your partnership and appreciate you and your kind words. So now we're going to have Izzy Chowdhury talk about our interfaith resources here at OHSP.
So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for Deputy Director Eric Zarzik, as well as the Bergen County Prosecutor. Great partnership along with his folks, particularly Detective Sergeant Chris Whiting, as well as Risk Mitigation Planner Billy Sloan. And I'll get into their roles later on as the Counterterrorism Coordinator, as well as the Risk Mitigation Planner. So before I begin, I really wanted to speak regarding what and who the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security is. So the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, OHSP, was founded back in March of 2006, combining that preparedness portion, which is the emergency planning portion, along with the counterterrorism portion. It basically mirrored off the Federal Department of Homeland Security. As time has passed and the threats have evolved, we've also included that cybersecurity piece now. A few years ago, New Jersey was again on the forefront, like many other programs. We established what's known as the New Jersey Cybersecurity Communication Integration Cell, or known as the NJKIC. Later on, my colleague Krista Venezuela will provide a thorough brief on what the NJKIC is and what type of resources the NJKIC can provide to your organization. So let me first begin regarding the interfaith resources, and particularly the Interfaith Advisory Council. The Interfaith Advisory Council is basically a combination of law enforcement as well as religious leaders. Initially, when the Interfaith Advisory Council, or the IAC, started back in 2012, it started with a handful of people. And since last year, the Interfaith Advisory Council has expanded to all 21 counties, all main religious groups, with over 3,500 members to the IAC. So the IAC meets about 4 times a year on a quarterly basis. This is chaired by our director. Currently, it is Director Lori Duran. And we provide various types of resources, particularly the current threat analysis. So what is going on, whether it's international terrorism or domestic terrorism, or various types of threats related to religious organizations. We provide information to the current grant status and other aspects of the suspicious activities, which I'll go into a little bit later. And when there is actually an emergency, our director will call a conference call where all members of the IAC are invited to listen into. And what we do is provide an accurate description of whatever the incident occurred, whether here in the state of New Jersey or in the nation. related to religious organizations. In that call, we have additionally to the Director, Lori Duran, the Attorney General, the Colonel of the State Police, the Special Agent in charge of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Newark Field Division, as well as the U.S. Attorney over at Newark. That particular conference call is not a watered-down version of what events are occurring. The conference call provides accurate information, a little bit more what the media provides, but we do not provide classified information. So it's a great forum to get ahead of whatever the incidents is occurring, but also provide what we are doing on the law enforcement perspective to mitigate those threats here in the state of New Jersey. So what type of resources does our office provide? So one of the things our office, if you go onto our website on njhomelandsecurity.gov/interfaith, on there we have all the resources listed in one page. First topic I wanted to discuss real quickly was our intelligence products. So our office actually provides intelligence notes related to various type of topics, whether it's domestic terrorism or international terrorism, cyber threats that are going on. That information is posted for the public right on our website, right on our interfaith website. Additional to that, another forefront for our office is that we provide an annual threat assessment, meaning that what is the current threat environment on a national level, specifically what is happening here in New Jersey. We also go even more further is to highlight what level each of these threats are. So whether it's domestic terrorism, within that, what type of groups are the biggest threats here in New Jersey. So the Bergen County prosecutor mentioned security assessments. So one of the things we understand here at the federal level, state level, county level, is that religious organizations are a soft target. However, they're a very, very important infrastructure at all levels of the government. That being said, as security professionals, we understand what type of intelligence gaps or security gaps you have in those religious organizations. So collectively, as the prosecutor had mentioned earlier, we come out and we actually go through your building, soup to nuts, exactly what those security gaps are, and then providing a report. Now, going back to those titles I was referring to. So New Jersey split up into two portions in terms of grant process as well as other infrastructure matters. So Bergen County is part of what's known as the UASI counties, the Urban Area Security Initiative. Each county in the UASI region, which are 7, including Bergen County, they have known of what is the risk mitigation planner. Part of that person's responsibility is to oversee critical infrastructure within their county and work with our office as well as Department of Homeland Security to secure and protect those critical infrastructure. Part of that as well is to protect those houses of worship. So working with the risk mitigation planner or the RMP, our office, the New Jersey State Police, and Department of Homeland Security, which Dan Schultz will speak about later, a little bit more detail on what their role is, including doing some of these security assessments, actually come out and go through your house of worship. Now, the other thing the prosecutor had mentioned is those reports, the security assessment reports, are part of the requirement for the grant opportunities. So the state of New Jersey has 2 grant programs. The first one I'm going to discuss real quick is the Nonprofit Security Grant Program, or the NSGP. That is a federal grant administered by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is FEMA. So collectively, that particular grant is $50 million nationwide. Out of the $50 million, New Jersey last year received more than $11.5 million just here in the state of New Jersey. We only came number 2 to New York with a very fractional amount less than New York. This year, which unfortunately we closed that particular grant back in April, the grant application for fiscal 2021 was $150,000. So what can you apply for in terms as a house of worship for the grants? That includes panic alarms, cameras, doors, locks, film-on windows, bollards, various types of items that would target harden your particular house of worship. Now, the second grant is known as the New Jersey Nonprofit Security Grant Program. This particular grant has not been closed yet. In fact, it hasn't been opened yet. So please look out for it. We'll probably be doing it very close in the near future. So the New Jersey NSGP is very much structured like the federal NSGP. The difference between the two grants is that the NSGP has two grant applications. One portion is the target and hardened piece, structured exactly like the NSGP, where you could use that money to buy cameras, doors, locks, etc. That particular application is for $50,000. The second portion or the second application is for security. In other words, you can use the money for that particular grant to hire extra duty law enforcement or private security. That is to supplement, it's not used to hire anybody, but to supplement any of your current security. It can be used for any of the high holy days or throughout that process of that grant. So again, that grant has not been opened yet, so please look out for it. It should be opening in the very near future. So the last thing I wanted to discuss real quickly, which is very important, is what's known as the Suspicious Activity Reports, or SARS. So what SARS is that basic see something, say something campaign, where we're looking for behavior, suspicious behavior. This is not about race, color, creed, religion, but actual suspicious behavior. What's not normal? What's not normal in your area? So there's an actual process established here in the state of New Jersey. And the reason being is that lessons learned after 9/11, there was a huge communication problem. There's not only a communication problem within the federal system, the FBI, CIA in particular, but also a problem in communication from the local to the federal government, specifically here in New Jersey. So when you compare it to New York City, there's a chain of command police command structure. So when you're in any 5 boroughs, it's all covered by NYPD. And there's a chain of command that goes up through the process. So New Jersey is very different than that. Here in the state of New Jersey, we have over 540 municipalities with law enforcement power. We have 21 counties with law enforcement power, the prosecutor being the chief of law enforcement within their county. At the state level, we have numerous law enforcement powers. New Jersey State Police, our office, the Division of Criminal Justice, for examples. Then at the federal level, there are numerous federal agencies that operate here in New Jersey. But specifically here, we're talking about the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and even more further, and specifically, the Joint Terrorism Task Force. So what happens is you, as a private citizen, see a suspicious activity, you call your local police department, and you report that information. So what happens? Even though it might not be criminal, but it's still suspicious. So what we did was we created what's known as a counterterrorism coordinator program. Every single municipality in the state of New Jersey has a municipal counterterrorism coordinator, at least one. Every county has a counterterrorism coordinator in all 21 counties. In this case, Detective Sergeant Chris Whiting, very good friend of mine, and I've known him for 15 years or so at this point, is a counterterrorism coordinator for Bergen County. He and I work on a regular basis. We're on the phone all the time. We communicate all the time, along with my partner, Detective Lieutenant John Page. And what happens is when that information comes in, it goes through the local police department to the municipal counterterrorism coordinator within that police department. They take that information and send it over to the counterterrorism coordinator. The counterterrorism coordinator then sends it down to the ROC, which is known as the Regional Operational Intelligence Center. The ROC is the New Jersey State Fusion Center. In the ROC, we have a cell what's known as the Counterterrorism Watch. It's basically the intake system within the state of New Jersey. The CT Watch takes that information and inputs it into what's known as the New Jersey Suspicious Activity Report Database, or NJSARS. Once that information is inputted in this database, it generates and populates and automatically sends that information for the people that need to know. In this case, for example, John, myself, Chris Whiting, specifically the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force receives that information. And the reason the FBI JTTF receives this information is because the FBI JTTF is the lead agency in terrorism investigation. FBI JTTF at this point reviews that information. That information might be connected to an ongoing investigation, whether here in the state of New Jersey or on a national level. If that's the case, they keep that information. The second part of it is if there's some information that they want to do is mitigate that threat, they'll go out since they have the first right of refusal. If not, that information, that SAR report, comes back down to the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security Preparedness. At that point, one of our detectives, whether it's John, myself, or numerous other detectives, get assigned that suspicious activity report. And what we do is work with our county and local partners to mitigate that threat. So although this information that you might see, this suspicious activity might be innocuous to you, you don't know if it might be connected to something up north or south or central. And that's the whole point, right? We want to connect those dots and make sure something like 9/11 doesn't happen again. So that concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions, please post them on the board. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Loretta, back to you.
Thank you so much, Izzy, and you provided us a lot of information, and I see we have questions for you. So I do encourage all the attendees to continue to put your questions in the Q&A box, and we will address those at the end of the presentation and offer them up to the presenters that they apply to. So next we have Joanne Lowry with the FEMA. She is going to be talking about the FEMA resources.
Hi. Thank you so much, Loretta. And I thank your department, the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, for inviting me to speak tonight, and the Bergen County Prosecutor. But I really want to thank all the houses of worship who have joined us tonight to hear all these presentations about how the government can better help you to be prepared for an emergency. So we'll be talking about building resilient communities together. Allison, I think I'm having a problem with the moving the slides. Okay, my apologies, everyone. All right, so let's talk for a few minutes about FEMA's mission. Our mission of FEMA is to help people before, during, and after disasters. And our vision is a prepared and resilient nation. So most people know FEMA for what we do after a disaster, how we come in following a horrible incident like Hurricane Sandy, and we pay for the rebuilding of infrastructure and buildings such as houses of worship that are now covered by FEMA. And we make people whole again by providing temporary and permanent housing solutions. So most people don't realize that we spend an equal amount of our budget, if not more, on preparedness, on making sure that we have a nation that is ready and resilient to absorb a horrible disaster. So we do this with a strategic plan in mind. This one is a graphic of our plan that's right now in effect for 2018 to 2022. And as you can see, the first priority of our agency is to build a culture of preparedness. And how do we do this is a question. We do this first by incentivizing investments to reduce risk to our communities. We do this by offering the National Flood Insurance Program for those who have homes or businesses, structures within a floodplain so that they can absorb that impact if they were to be flooded. And we do this by pre-disaster mitigation programs. Our newest one is called the BRIC program, B-R-I-C, and it stands for Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. And this program just started last year, highly successful, competitive program. But what we do is we get money to states for projects that will help to prepare and to mitigate the impacts to both infrastructure, but also just to save lives and property. This funding year that begins at sometime this summer, there'll be $1 billion of competitive funds that'll be available to the states and territories and tribal nations. These other two two strategies are more geared to our organization. We also have regional faith-based goals that we're very serious about because we recognize the power that houses of worship have in delivering messages and in encouraging their congregation to listen to the experts about how best to protect your family, yourselves as individuals, your families, your neighbors, your houses of worship, and on up through the community and to the state level. So here we have a three-tiered system. We encourage the emergency operation planning for your houses of worship. I'm going to go into that a little bit further in a couple of minutes, but I will say that we hope our houses of worship on the line tonight deliver messages to your congregants about preparing their families and even your pets to absorb some of the catastrophic effects in a community so that you're ready to feed yourself and your family, pets, if there's a disaster until help can get to you. Also, we want you to convey messages on programs that we offer related to an active shooter situation. There's a lot of FEMA information on ready.gov, and there are definitely some things that you can do as individuals, family, and also congregation. And we also hope that you will prepare your whole house of worship by planning now to provide not just emotional care and your normal spiritual care for your congregation, but possibly become a source of additional support, such as being a point of distribution for disaster-related goods or a shelter or food kitchen. So identifying volunteers now is a very important part of the process. So we'll talk about a little bit more about emergency operation plans that I mentioned earlier. FEMA has a guide that is directed specifically to houses of worship. And this 38-page guide is a template for how you and your congregations can better plan to absorb a disaster. We use a 6-step planning process, as FEMA does for most of our community planning activities. We encourage you to form a planning team, a collaborative team that includes leaders of your house of worship or your congregation, and also some of your professionals like your business manager, your accountant, and then volunteers who maybe have expertise in areas such as healthcare or law enforcement. If you have any fire or first aid representatives in your congregation, it's always very helpful too. And then what you want to do as a team is you want to understand your risks. Certainly you're going to hear a lot tonight about Homeland Security and the active shooter threats, so I won't go into that, but I will say that if you have other types of hazards, including proximity to water, or possibly if you have forest fire situations, if your parish is within a highly or densely forested area, you want to think about your risks. And then you want to determine your goals of this group. You want to write down and articulate to the team how best can you as a group move forward to not just identify the goals of this plan, but also to solve them. And we call that the writing of courses of action. Sometimes you hear the word used annex in an emergency operation plan. And what these are is the certain situations that you want to plan for. So like I said, flooding might be one and fire might be another, but you also might want to have an annex that is directed towards the evacuation, a very specific situation like an evacuation, or the setting up of a shelter or a food kitchen. So with each house of worship, your courses of action will probably differ. And certainly there are people within your community, emergency managers at the community, county, state level, including FEMA, who would be glad to help you and to walk you through these guides. And finally, what you want to do is you want to get the approval of the team for this plan. But once it's been developed, there's a very important step that people forget, and that's the maintenance and testing of an emergency operations plan, the actual drilling to make sure that people know their roles and can perform those roles. And what about if people leave your parish or your congregation or a clergy member or another leader? You need to maintain them. These are living documents. They need to be maintained at least quarterly, I would say, is a good goal to have these updated to make sure that people are still available and that nothing has changed. And I also encourage you to identify a very good grant writer amongst your congregation. That's really important, especially for the grant programs that we've heard about earlier. And also there's philanthropic and private sector grants that might be applicable too. So you want somebody who can articulate your goals of your congregation and make sure you're available for funding. And finally, I'll say about this that this is available not just in this booklet form, but it's also a webinar. And on occasion, and hopefully in the next coming years, we get past the COVID emergency, you'll see us delivering this emergency operations planning session in person. So please look for that. And this is just a few more resources. We want you also, and I should have mentioned that if you have your plan developed, you want to run it past all your first responders and emergency managers within your community. Having a plan in a file cabinet is not going to serve you well. You need to tell your police responders, your first responders, and emergency managers what your plans are so they all have an idea of what to expect. This is a really great FEMA program, and I watched it again the other night, and it always stuns me in its simplicity and how it could really change lives. This is a program we call You're the Help Until Help Arrives. It's 5 simple steps that can save a life. And in the video that goes along with this, that you can see the link for below, it uses a car accident as the example with somebody severely injured, and you come upon them, and what do you do? And it goes through basic steps in great thoroughness. First, you call 911, and people always think, oh, somebody else has done that, but it's really essential that you take that step because it's possible no one ever else called. And also, you need to know how to deal with the operator. They're highly trained 911 specialists, but you need to give them information, a proximity to where you are. Like if you're in a high rise, you have to tell them the floor. You have to tell them the situation. Is it a car accident versus an active shooter situation? And so 911 is a really important step that you really should learn how to best convey that information. Next, you stay safe. You get yourself out of harm's way. If you're in the middle of a road, you get yourself out and you try the best you can to save the lives of the one or more people that you're trying to help. And stop the bleeding. It only takes 3 minutes to bleed out in extreme situations. And I didn't realize until I watched this again that the arteries that carry the majority of our blood are deeply embedded under our skin, close to our bones. And if you don't apply ample pressure to stop the bleeding, it will continue. So this is a great video for showing you how to apply the pressure and what to do with a tourniquet and more until help arrives. Positioning the injured so that they can breathe better and providing comfort. Just keeping somebody conscious, if possible, is really an important step. This has a great interactive episode as well online at this website. It's geared towards kids, but it's really entertaining. And have everybody in the family watch it and certainly share it with your congregation. And would you do us the favor too, congregations, if you put these in your bulletins on your Facebook page or your Twitter account, not just this, but all of our programs for FEMA and the other organizations. I think it's really helpful, especially these ones that are geared towards individual and family preparedness. We have a terrific Region 2 FEMA Preparedness and Resilience Bulletin. We provide it monthly, and we do special editions as well. And it will tell you about trainings and workshops and also about our grant programs, the deadlines that are really important for you to know as an organization. And it gives you special tips as well. There's so much information. I really encourage you to sign up at this website, and also there's an email here for our preparedness division. In the event you want to, your organization wants to enter some information for others to see, we certainly will help you there. We have an equally as popular webinar series. This goes out, the invitations for both the bulletin and the webinar go out to between 35 and 40,000 people across our nation, and we have people joining from other nations as well. Here's a sampling of some of the events, and you can see our event tonight is on here as well. But the great thing is, at this website, you'll find not just the ones that are forward-looking, but you'll find recordings of hundreds of webinars that have been produced on great topics that will really help, especially the houses of worship. We have ones that are specially designated for you. For example, how to apply for public assistance and other grant programs, and also emergency procedures for houses of worship. So check that out, please. We also have a lot of interactive toolkits online. This one happens to be a scenario situation where there's 9 different scenarios that you can go through with either your family or your congregation. Emergency situations, the one shown is for flooding and for a hurricane, but there's other ones for heat, for COVID and other pandemics. And so you can test your skills, and it also has an answer key associated with each disaster so that you can work through it with your group and make sure that you understand what you could do to improve your own sense of what needs to happen in an emergency. This is a similar tool available on ready.gov, and this is if you want to go more in depth on very specific instances, for example, saving for a rainy day fund for an emergency, or how to safeguard your documents, and knowing your evacuation routes, just some of the 12 that are mentioned here, but it's something that's very fun because you can use your smartphone to scan the code there, and it'll bring you right to a page that gives you an enormous amount of information. And this is just some of the efforts that we've done for COVID-19. For the last 4 months, we've been in communities that are underserved, that could not get to, community members that could not get to one of the mega sites, and we went directly to these underserved communities, Jersey City, Elizabeth, Newark, Trenton, many more, and we made sure with our faith-based communities, hand in hand, we went to them to bring us into the community and serve members who, for a lot of reasons, either could not get to a mega site or had reservations and hesitation about having the vaccine. So with our faith-based partners, we talked to well over 1,000 in Region 2. We went into the communities to serve those most in need. And we also, FEMA also had a bulletin and webinar series specific about COVID-19. And just like the other webinars I told you about earlier, you can look up the recordings of these and still see them. And I'd like to give you, Deborah Costa is our Community Preparedness Officer, and her information is here as well as mine. We are always happy to take any questions, so please contact us. Houses of Worship, we are happy to do whatever we can to help you build your emergency operations plan and get you to resources and funding that can help. So here is our website, and I thank you. Loretta, thank you. I'll turn it back to you, and my thanks to all of you who joined us tonight.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Next, we will have Dan Schultz with the Department of Homeland Security.
Good afternoon, everybody. I don't know if you can see me. There you go. Hey, I just wanted to say thanks for tuning in today. I think that you'll find that you're going to hear a lot of information today that's valuable. And I don't think that you have to copy everything down. I think we're all going to be putting links inside the chat box that's going to help lead you to those spots. You know, I would say while you're here reading it or listening, you can go there, have your browser open up, and then just save that and hit it later. But what I want to talk about is how to get started with security emergency preparedness. I know I'm going to go ahead and go off camera because I like to read. No, my head will be shaking, but we just want to make sure that you're paying attention to us, I guess the best way of putting it. So my name is Dan Schultz. Like I said, I'm a protected security advisor with the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. That's a lot of securities in it. That's what happens when politicians decide what's named your agency. Of the two protected security advisors we have in New Jersey, there's myself, who covers north of Middlesex and Mercer County, and my partner, Andy Smith, who will have his contact information up a little later. He covers the rest of the state. Our goal at the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency is to bring national level security programs, resilience programs, to the local level. Every state's a little bit different. We're very fortunate here in New Jersey. I can't say it enough how mature the protection, the state apparatus is when it comes to working with not just the houses of worship and the faith-based community, but also just everybody in the state. Whether it's a See Something, Say Something program, everything is really great here, and you couldn't ask for a better state to have, be part of the solution with. So I'm going to go start with the basic statement. It's always best to first engage with local law enforcement or government agencies to see what's available to support your faith-based community to improve congregant and facility security. Additionally, engagement with professional security planners can provide direction and assistance at a cost estimate and maybe the answer for you. However, with nearly 400,000 congregations across the U.S., and I think our number here is about 4,000 in New Jersey, not everyone has the means or the local resource to assist. I mean, though Izzy talked about Office of Homeland Security Preparedness resources, that primary route for your, I would always say that's really, we have a lot of information there at the OHSP website, and that is your primary point. Grants are always sexy, but if it's a state grant or even a federal grant, it needs to go through the Office of Homeland Security Preparedness. That is the application process. We also have the county prosecutor's office, as we heard earlier today with the Bergen County prosecutor. Many times that's that first outreach to the state level or at the county level. The prosecutor's office across the state, reach out to them, see if they have somebody that can help you out when we talk about, building this a facility security program. And then lastly, Joanne talked about the emergency planning and training that comes out of FEMA. All of these work together. What I'm trying to do with our organization, and what my goal with the presentation is to talk about kind of putting a security program together, and that's really what we want to talk about. You see that tag right here, the House of Worship. We'll go ahead and put that in the chat box, but that's going to take you to everything you need that we've talked about today in a single spot. So let's talk about using our House of Worship resource page. The faith-based community resource page is designed to guide the minimally skilled or experienced user through the risk reduction process. Using the page will guide you through a simple process with resources that CISA has brought together to inform and make securing your faith-based facility a little easier by demystifying the process. So the process can be much more granular. We've tried to keep it at an easy-to-use, complete level. As you see here, we got about four spots. There's a lot to them. I know that Joanne talked about 6 parts just in the planning side, but we're going to look at these 4 main areas to help, and the resources we have built to get you through building the security program. Step 1, it's like everything, you got to start the process, and we heard this earlier today. You need to form that team to guide your organization's security and safety. Identify the priorities and a vision for your facility's security. Identify available support resources who can assist in the process. We talked about all of those earlier. And this includes law enforcement, emergency planning agencies, your local CISA protective security advisor, as myself, and web-based resources. But there's somebody that's already been out there that can help you. We always say that old term, hoe that road again. I think that there's going to be a lot of partners out there. And that includes people within the Interfaith Advisory Committee. Are there local working groups amongst the faith-based community, a mysterium, if you will, that's going to be able to provide some lessons learned? Next thing, you need to understand the threats that you may face. Become aware of local and regional threats and concerns through local faith-based community groups, law enforcement, information sharing communities of potential security issues and protective measures. Your local law enforcement is usually, every law enforcement agency in the state normally has a community relations person. Reach out to them, see what's available. When we talk about threats, the Homeland Security Information Network, HISN, is our official system for sharing sensitive but unclassified information between government and private sector partners. This is also a gateway to numerous other resources to build awareness of emerging threats as well as enhance security and preparedness. I'll talk about that later. We have a huge exercise program that we like to call Exercise in the Box that makes you available. Now I'd like to speak about the two most valuable resources you can use to start your security journey. That's very big. Start with the drum roll here. But first is your protective security advisor. Myself and Andy here, there's about 125 of us across the country, and we bring those national level tools, programs, and resources to the state and local level. And most importantly, we work with local governments, but it's about working with American citizens to figure out how we can help you out. When speaking about the faith-based community, they can help point you in the right direction at the state and local level for available resources, as well as step in and assist you in additional services noted here. Many times when we talk about assessments and training exercises, the risk mitigation planners at the county prosecutor's office, Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, as well as FEMA, we all work together as a big happy family to try to cover down to make sure we're taking care of the neighborhood. And sometimes it gets a little busy, but we understand our role, and we're more than willing to put all egos aside to ensure that we're helping everybody out. To contact your local PSA, send an email request to centralassisted.gov.
I didn't do that. Try tapping above to edit.
I'm sorry? So we'll have that information, my contact information, at the end of this presentation. They're taking on the role. So here's the first thing. We're still number one, and what we want to talk about is if you're taking on the role of leading the effort or just part of the security team, the first thing you should read is Mitigating Attacks on House of Worship Security Guide. The security guide, we've analyzed 10 years worth of targeted attacks on House of Worship to provide context to security vulnerabilities, potential mitigating recommendations. The case studies and reviews are examples of the breadth of threats that you will face. From physical attacks such as active shooter incidents, arsons, bombings, to less visible cyber attacks that we never talk about. I know Chris is going to talk about that after me. These are all things that it might seem at first blush won't affect you, but cyber could be really disheartening and really put a crunch in your pocketbook. This guide offers analysis, recommendations, and resources. Most importantly, this is going to get you through that framework of how to do the job, how to put this together. And so, our goal is to find that best way to mitigate this attack is to take this holistic approach. And we bring all of these things together on developing and implementing the framework. This right here, along with the resource page, is going to be able to really help you walk that walk to start your role as you bring these things together and work on your plan. Step 2, conduct a security risk assessment. We've talked about this several times, but we need to do that to better understand your vulnerabilities and the opportunities for security improvements. Assessments take many forms and are many times available at little to no cost, whether it's mine at the Office of Homeland Security or at DHS or Office of Homeland Security Preparedness or your local risk mitigation planner at the prosecutor's office or your local town. You've got to contact those local or state planning agencies or law enforcement for an on-site assessment if available. If not, those aren't available. The CISA self-assessment tool will identify vulnerabilities and mitigating strategies to help walk you through it. And quite honestly, today's tool provides an easy-to-use application that, when completed, provides a reasoned assessment of your facility security with the following outputs for use in implementing and securing your security improvement plan. It gives you an executive report that you can use to submit with your assessment or your grant justification, investment justification if you're doing a grant application. This is completely acceptable here in the state of New Jersey, as well as accepted by FEMA. The action items list that dives into specifics and can be used for prioritization of efforts, as well as voluntary options for consideration. And everything we provide is referenced, and it takes you how to get it. As we go to this next slide right here, you can see this is the areas we focus on: security, safety, emergency management, perimeter security, parking and barriers, access control, as well as your closed circuit TV and video surveillance. All things that are going to provide you that upfront and back-end security. So what's in it? What is this self-assessment in that? It says here, I like to call it behind the curtain, but how does this work? The actual tool is a point and click, and it goes into grades. But here, the perfect example is like this. This is a screenshot of our PDF version of the assessment, and what I hope to do here is show you what's going on. Each question has either 3 or 5 answers. The answers and options for consideration are ranged from the lowest level of security that offers a low level of protection, that's on the red side, to a very high level of security that provides a greatly enhanced level of protection on the green side. Then this infers a priority of actions to implement. For each relevant question, you identify the answer that most accurately represents your facility. This, along with additional clarifying information when needed at the bottom of each section, will provide you with the corresponding and starting areas for improving your security. Now, as you can see here, I'm going to gesture with this, but as you can see here, we're not going to try to take you from the very low here, or even in our example, the House of Worship has a security manager committee, but nothing happens. We just want you to start meeting. Let's go one thing at a time, and then as you work your way down here, we can improve the security. We want to take the huge jump, but let's do one thing at a time. We all have heard the saying, you need to learn to crawl, stand, walk, run. And that's what we're trying to do with this this assessment tool. We're at step 3. Once you've completed your security assessment, and you need to develop a plan for prioritizing and addressing security improvements, planning needs, training opportunities that fit in your organization's security vision. These can include planning, prioritization, training, budgeting. Here we have a couple of nuggets that we've noted in here, which is we have FEMA's Guide to Developing a High-Quality Emergency Operations Center, our operations plan. That's one thing of this that we would like you to look at. As far as training goes, we have the Security for Soft Targets and Crowded Places resource guide that's online and available at darcissa.gov. All of these are available, and what they can do is help bring you those things into a single spot so that you understand what's available and how to use them. And that's really our goal there, is how to use them. This is not a difficult process, but the first time out, it might seem a little bit burdensome. One thing we always like to talk about is the training is simple things. In this case, let's talk about one of our resources we have. It's called the Power of Hello, Power of Hello Guide for Houses of Worship. In a nutshell, what we try to do is, get our big goal is to make sure that everybody understands their role. And we're so used to see something, say something. This was designed to help, that we'll say that that usher, that volunteer, understand their role and how they might approach somebody and investigate, see if they're suspicious, what their actions could be. And then lastly, it also counts on the local, or I don't say local, it counts on you as leadership position of this faith-based organization to have a way or have a place where somebody can make those reports so that everybody knows what they're going to do if something comes up. Now, this may require actions, it might require reporting. All of this is going to walk you through, and this has been designed to be very simple, especially for the volunteer side. And I think it's something that you might want to take a look at. Oh, my goodness gracious, we're getting to step 4. I'm sorry if I'm rushing through this, but you know how it is with these afternoon events. You just want to make sure you get all the information out. The next step is to test your plans and improvements to make sure they address the identified vulnerabilities and ensure each team member knows their role in securing the facility. Many times, local or state-level Homeland Security officers offer no-cost resources and exercises to assist. Maybe several together, several ministerium could get together to have work with Office of Homeland Security Preparedness. Maybe there's something local that's going on. As I mentioned earlier, the CISA has an exercise program that can be accessed through membership on the previously mentioned HISN CI. All the links are hot when if you download the House of Worship presentation. And this all you do is apply for membership. Anybody can get in there. We just want to make sure it's got a password. We just want to make sure you're good to go. And then lastly, once you've conducted your exercise or assessment of your improvements, take time to review the findings and then move back to step 2 to continue your security improvement continuum. That's what we're talking about. Too many times we have this process where we go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and we don't go back to step 2, or we don't go back to step 3. This is a continual, Joanne made a comment earlier about putting something on the shelf. Well, this is a challenge that we always have. So our goal is to not just create shelfware, it's to have this continuing improvement. So you test those things that you do, whether they're plans, whether they're training, whether they're physical barriers, security things. All of those things require you to go back, see how they work, and try again. So I always say that here's the questions, but these two sites here, CISA.gov, goes into our sites, and I will be posting a few links at the faith-based organization's House of Worship area. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. And lastly, put a face to the name here, Dan Schultz, New Jersey North District, and then my partner, Andrew Smith, down in the South District, New Jersey. Either of us can be contacted. Feel free. There might be great resources in your county or in your town, and it's our job too to be able to identify them and help you out, point you in the right direction. We're always willing to help, and usually before we go out, we're going to talk to the locals to make sure we're all coordinated and working together. And on that note, thank you for your time and attention, and I will turn it back over to Loretta for the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Next, we will have Krista Valenzuela. She's with the NJ KIC, and she's going to talk about cybersecurity considerations.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, I'll be discussing the current cyber threats that we're seeing right now and ways to help defend against these different threats and lower your chances of being victimized. If you're not familiar with NJ KIC, it's the New Jersey Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Cell. It's that cybersecurity division of NJ OHS and PACE. We've faced a lot of challenges over the last year, and cybersecurity is certainly one of them. As everyone began working from home, learning remotely as well, a lot of different avenues for these cyber threat actors to navigate were opened up. We saw a lot of increases in different cyber threats, including ransomware, as well as credential theft. And these were exacerbated, of course, by COVID-19. So today we're going to be talking about the current threat environment, which includes ransomware, credential compromise, and data breaches, several social engineering scams that we see, and then exploiting public interest. That'll become clear when we get to there, what I mean by that. And then, of course, achieving that digital resilience and lowering our chances of being victimized by these various cyber threats. So that's a bad slide, but usually I start these presentations with ransomware because it's one of the most prevalent threat that we see, one of the most costly. But today I'm going to start with credential compromise, and you'll see how this leads into the discussion about ransomware. When I say credentials, what I mean by that is the combination of a username or an email address and a password. Oftentimes we talk about credentials as being the keys to the kingdom, and what we mean by that is that your credentials provide access to your various online accounts. This word chart is based off of data from several years of data breaches that have occurred and the passwords that were exposed in those breaches and the most common passwords that we see. So this is really just a visual example of how we're pretty poor at password management and making sure that we're using strong passwords. There's this website, it's called haveitbeenpwned.com. What this website does is it indexes that information that I just mentioned before, the data that's exposed in these breaches. It might be your email address and password. It could be personally identifiable information, such as your social security number. It could be your personal health information, protected health information. And it's a good resource for everybody to use. If you feel comfortable, you can put in your email address, and it will navigate through that database to show you which breaches that information might have been revealed in. And then it tells you what data exactly was revealed in those breaches. It's a good place to go when you want to check in on your email and see kind of what data is out there on you. Sometimes these companies, they notify you, but it might be via email. You might not look at it and not realize that they've been breached. What's important here, too, is that, and for this example used here, this is an old password of mine, you can see that information was revealed from House and from MyFitnessPal. These accounts aren't particularly sensitive in and of themselves. But if you start utilizing the same password across multiple accounts and you're using that password for a more sensitive account, an account that holds more sensitive data, that becomes an issue. Over the past several years, really since we started providing information out on our online accounts, data breaches have occurred. So there's so much information that's already out there that's public. This isn't even on the dark web or these protected forums that these cyber threat actors go on. It's just readily available on the open internet. When you create an online account, you are entrusting that company, that service, to hold your information secure. So you're saying, okay, I'm gonna make a password for this account, and I'm entrusting you to hold that safe. A lot of the time that doesn't happen. It could be negligence on behalf of the online company, or it could be that they were targeted by a hacker and information was revealed that way. Either way, you don't have control over that information anymore. You don't have control over how that password is stored and protected. Something like multi-factor authentication is something that all of us have, that we can control, that we can enable to much better secure our online accounts. If you aren't familiar with multi-factor authentication, it's also called two-factor authentication. And what this is a combination of at least 2 of 3 factors. The factors are something you have, which would be like a code, something you are, like a biometric, a fingerprint, or something that you know, like a password. Most often, a password is going to be one of those factors. And a lot of the time, a code ends up being what that second factor is. Any form of multi-factor authentication is better than none at all. If you're going to use the code-based MFA, then we do recommend using an authentication app, such as Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator. There are others. But really having any form of MFA is better than none at all. And this silly chart that I made, it's not very advanced, will really show you, though, why this is important. So you have an account such as MyFitnessPal. You know that there's not that much sensitive information there, so you get notice that they've been breached, so you change your password for that account and don't really think much of it. Well, a threat actor might use that password and try to get into one of my more sensitive accounts. If I'm using that same password for my online banking account, for example, and I don't have MFA enabled, they will immediately gain access to my account. If I have MFA enabled, they will not be able to access my account unless they have that second factor. So unless they have my phone to get that code, or they have my fingerprint, they're not going to be able to get into that account. And there are some cases with the SMS-based, the text-based codes, where you can target somebody and circumvent MFA and still be able to gain access to an account. This is not able to be done at scale or automated yet. So really, even if you're using that, it's still much more secure than not having it at all. There are so many people without MFA enabled at this point that as long as you're not the low-hanging fruit, you'll probably be okay. But like I said, any form of MFA is better than none. Now, leading into ransomware, and I'll kind of connect this to what's happened recently. We've had several incidents, particularly in what I would consider the critical infrastructure space, where we've had ransomware incidents that you can see very clearly what the cascading effects, the implications of ransomware incidents can have downstream, not just for one company or one organization. The Colonial Pipeline incident, which occurred last month, is a really good case study in that. They provide fuel to about, I think it's 45% of the fuel used on the East Coast comes from Colonial Pipeline, one of their pipelines. For New Jersey, I think it was around 30%, but you get to a city like Nashville, and they got pretty much 100% of their fuel from Colonial Pipeline. When they were hit, and I think I do have, I have a slide for this, with ransomware, they found out about it on, I think, a Saturday or a Friday that they were hit with ransomware, and they were impacted, and they shut down all of their pipelines. This impacted their IT, so their business network, but they shut down the pipeline anyway, and that involves their operational technology. So all the pumps, that sort of equipment is connected, and in the Colonial Pipeline incident, their business network and their operational technology network did have some connection. So as a precaution, they shut everything down. They were only down from this ransomware incident for, I think, about 5 or 6 days, something like that, 5 days, I think. It still caused not only panic in some cases, where individuals, as you can see on these screenshots, were filling up plastic bags, containers with gas, but it caused gas stations to shut down. And a lot of this is fueled by speculation of a gas shortage or gas prices increasing, which both of those did happen. But you can see that these incidents aren't, just by themselves, onto themselves. It has cascading effects. So that's why it's important to protect ourselves against these ransomware incidents. And you can see here the hackers breached Colonial Pipeline using a compromised password. And this is where we get that connection to what I was just discussing with the credential compromise. So somebody at Colonial Pipeline reused a password that was involved in a data breach for their business or for their work credentials. So, for example, and I don't know the details of this yet; it's not out yet. But say this individual used a password for Office 365 for their work account, and they use that same password for something like that's as innocuous as something like MyFitnessPal. Mm-hmm. So, because they reused that password, and it's at least seems that they did not have multi-factor authentication enabled, they were able to get into Colonial Pipeline that way, and that's how they gained the access necessary to launch this ransomware incident. So it's something as simple as that can occur, that can cost millions of dollars. We don't even know how much it has cost Colonial Pipeline in total. We do know that they paid $4.4 million in ransom. The feds were able to get back over $3 million of that, and there's actually a couple of articles that detail how they do that. It's quite interesting, but luckily they were able to get some of that money back. And the company, or not the company, the threat actors, the threat group, in this case, their infrastructure was severely impacted because all of the media attention around this incident caused the federal investigations to occur, and they were able to dismantle a lot of their infrastructure, which is good, and it shows us that in certain cases there can be more done to thwart some of these attacks. Ransomware as a service. This is a term coined as a play on software as a service like Office 365. So this is becoming more and more common where there is a developer, software malware developer, who creates these ransomware variants. And those individuals are quite technical. You have to have a certain amount of knowledge to be able to create a piece of malware like ransomware. What they're doing, though, is they're creating those, and then they're selling or renting out access to that piece of that tool. So it's in the same way that I use Office 365, but I buy it off of Microsoft because I can't develop that software myself. So the same thing is happening in these cases. So you have very low-tech individuals able to launch these ransomware attacks using something like software as a service, and that was the case in the Colonial Pipeline incident as well. Ransomware evolution. So I would say over the last 5 years in particular, ransomware has changed a lot. It's become much more sophisticated than it was before. About 5 or 6 years ago, if you asked the NJ Kit, because we kept a repository of information, hey, I've been hit with ransomware. It was CryptoLocker or one of those variants from years ago. We might have a decryption tool available that would actually allow a victim to decrypt their information and get their data back. So in these ransomware incidents, what's happening, what these threat actors are doing, they gain access to a network, and the network resources like all the data, the files on it, everything. They lock them, and they hold the key. These hackers hold this key, and if you pay them the ransom, then they give you the key to unlock your data. Years ago, we might have had something that a security researcher developed to be able to get your data back without paying. Now it is much more sophisticated. It is few and far between that we have any resources we can use to actually decrypt or unlock that data anymore. The amount of ransom demanded in these cases has continued to increase. It is at least a couple of $100,000 in ransom. And you'll see a lot of these cases that go into the news are these bigger enterprises, bigger corporations that get hit. But we've seen that actually small to medium-sized businesses and organizations are impacted by ransomware much more than a corporate, Fortune 500 company would be. So that money for those ransom demands is quite impactful for those organizations. The top attack vectors, phishing, of course, is going to be one. RGP compromise, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying at the start of the presentation, that things have changed a lot with COVID, with people working from home, learning from home. There's something called remote desktop protocol. Opening this up on a network allows somebody like me who's working from home to access resources available on my business's network, even though I'm not on site. So creating that tunnel allows me to get into a corporate network by being at home, for example. By opening up RDP, though, that's a connection that a threat actor, a hacker, can exploit to gain access to a network, and unauthorized access. It's a very common attack vector for ransomware. Software vulnerabilities, the exploitation of them has also increased as an attack vector for ransomware. So a couple of months ago, there was a Microsoft Exchange server vulnerability, very severe vulnerability, and that was used in some cases to launch ransomware. The average downtime is 23 days now. That's up over 10 days, I think, from year over year. And like I said, if you're a small to medium-sized business in particular, a company that relies on internet traffic, the purchase of goods or services over the internet, and you have 23 days of downtime, you cannot afford that. Can't afford to lose that potential revenue stream. It's not a good look for a company. They don't seem like they are reliable if you can't access their network resources. So 23 days is a long time. Like I said before, Colonial was down, I think, about 5 days, and they couldn't even afford that much. It was detrimental. Ransomware costs last year were estimated around $20 billion. There's a couple of statistics that I'll have up on the screen this evening, and they're all going to be low balls, because a lot of these cases, those companies and organizations that are impacted by these cyber incidents aren't compelled, aren't forced to report them. A lot of these are voluntarily reported, so it's always going to be a lower number than the actual losses. Cases of data exfiltration, this is important. So, and this is one of the bigger advances that we've seen, or biggest changes in tactics that we've seen for ransomware over the last year, is the inclusion of a data exfiltration secondary extortion tactic. What's happening is that when that individual, that hacker or hacker group, gains access to the network, they steal data off of the network first before they launch the ransomware payload. The reason that they're doing this is because now they can say, okay, I've hit your network. Even if you have data backups to restore from, I've stolen data off of your network, and if you don't pay me, I will publicly disclose on one of these leak sites that we have all of the data that we stole off your network. This becomes a big issue if there's any intellectual property details in there, any trade secrets, protected information like personally identifiable information, social security numbers, protected health information. All of those two in particular, you incur fines if that data is not protected properly and it gets leaked. And again, it's going to be that reputation thing as well. And so this has become a tactic that we've seen more and more now. Over 3/4 of the incidents that we're seeing now include that data exfiltration component as well. Healthcare and professional services are the top attacked industries. And the reason is pretty simple there. Healthcare can't afford to have that downtime, so they're more likely to pay the ransom because it gets them back up and running faster. Professional services, what they mean by that is like an IT service provider. So if you're a small to medium-sized business or organization, you might be small enough that you outsource your IT. So you don't have an IT security team or an IT team. You have a managed service provider do that for you. They are the ones that are targeted because they have all those clients. So if a hacker is able to get into that network, they can more easily access all of their clients' networks as well. So by hitting the one, they might get 10 potential victims. You can see here the top industries. This is just more inclusive of all the different industries that we're seeing are hit with ransomware, and this is from the first quarter of this year. And this is what I've mentioned before, and you'll see here, the companies that are the bigger enterprises, corporations, they're not hit nearly as often as a business or organization with either 11 to 1,000 employees. That's a small to medium-sized business. And you can see it's I'll estimate maybe 60% of the ransomware incidents that we're seeing, so that's quite a big chunk. And the ones that are much bigger, so even just a little bit bigger, 1,000 to 10,000 employees, that's another big chunk. So really those ones with tens of thousands of employees aren't hit nearly as often. And that's for several reasons. The smaller businesses and organizations might not have the resources to devote for better IT security, and they might be more of a low-hanging fruit for them. This slide really just backs up the information that we've gotten from open source reporting of these ransomware incidents, the ones that we've gotten to the NJKIC. We do ingest incident reports, so we can assist, give consultation over the phone, that sort of thing, if you were hit with a ransomware incident. So that's where this data comes from. Remote access security, so as I mentioned, with having people working from home or working remotely, learning remotely, all of that, we have several resources available on our website to assist in doing remote work more securely. And a lot of that is going to integrate that multi-factor authentication. And I'm going to say that multiple times this presentation, as I already have, because it's one of the simplest things to do, particularly as an individual, to better secure yourself, your accounts, and your data, make you less likely to become a victim. So protecting your data. How do you protect against ransomware? A lot of the time, protecting against ransomware just means you're going to assume that it happens at some point. And that means having good data backups available to restore from if you are impacted by ransomware. This is not only for an organization, but also for you as an individual. Keep data backups off of the network, completely separate, not connected to the internet at all. And the reason for that is that some of these ransomware variants, like I said, are very sophisticated now. Once that ransomware gets onto a network, in a lot of cases, they're specifically looking for data backups that are connected, and they're going to be the first things that they encrypt to make you more compelled to pay that ransom. Storing it in a separate location, testing these backups, make sure they're good, because a lot of the time you might come across data backups and you'll think, oh, I'm great, I'm good. And then you try to restore from them and they're actually corrupted, they're not good. You can't restore from them. And that goes into the keeping multiple copies as well. Social engineering. So by social engineering, really what I'm saying is hacking a human. It's not hacking a piece of technology, really. The point here is trying to convince somebody to take an action that you want in order to achieve whatever your end goal is. Phishing is, of course, the biggest there, and that's basic email lures that you might come across, the Nigerian print scams of years ago, where it's very generic. It's not specific to you as a person at all, and they're just casting a really wide net, hoping that they catch something. Phishing is voice-based phishing. This includes if you receive a phone call from the IRS, supposedly, the FBI, and it also includes the tech support scams, somebody claiming to be from Microsoft support, those types of scams. And I'll go into an example in a bit. Spear phishing and whaling. Spear phishing is more specific phishing. So you're getting more precise with who you're targeting. So if I worked in HR, I might get a spear phishing email referencing direct deposit information, employee training, something like that. Whaling is when a hacker impersonates somebody higher up in a company, and they're targeting a subordinate. So an example of that would be I impersonate the boss of an administrative assistant. And I email the administrative assistant saying, hey, I'm tied up in meetings all day. I really need to get a few gift cards. Can you run out for me? Send me the codes in the back of the gift cards, and I'll pay you back at the end of the day. This is a very, very common scam. If you're ever emailed and requested to buy gift cards, always call that individual. Do not email them back, and make sure that request is legitimate. In a lot of cases, it will not be. Gift cards, once you send the codes in the back of the gift cards, I mean, they're done. That's it. You can't get your money back. You can't go back to CVS or wherever you bought the gift card from and say, I need a refund. I need to return this. Your money's just lost at that point. And it's one of the reasons, and it's not really traceable at that point either. So that's one of the reasons why they use gift cards. Business email compromise. This includes the invoice scam. So I would impersonate a vendor of a company, for example. I provide XYZ service or goods to them, and I email them impersonating that company saying, this is your invoice, we're due to be paid, and this is the account that you can wire the money to. Very, very common. And there are other business email compromise scams that are included there. So like I said before about the losses, this is going to be lower numbers of the actual total number of losses through these various social engineering schemes. Total losses, $4.2 billion in 2020. Nearly $71 million in losses from extortion tactics. And this is not talking about ransomware. This is, we got a lot of these a while ago. They're also called sextortion scams. An individual pretends that they have compromised your device, have recorded you going to illicit content sites, and are going to send that video to your contacts once you pay them. Very, very common scheme. In almost no cases does that individual actually have access to the device. They're just trying to extort that individual out of money. And $5 million in losses from New Jersey alone. $1.86 billion in losses from that business email compromise, like those invoice-type scams. It also includes payroll diversion scams. This is also called direct deposit scams. What happens here is somebody impersonates an employee of an organization and emails the HR department, whoever is in charge of payroll, the finance department, and says, I have a new bank account, I need to change my direct deposit information. They get the form to change that, send it back over, and then that legitimate employee's payroll is now rerouted to a different account that they don't have control over. Really bad for businesses because not only are they're paying a hacker essentially, or a scam artist, money that should have gone to their employee, but they also still have to pay that employee. They're obligated to pay them, so they're out, even more money, and they're not going to get that money back either in that case. Over $146 million in losses from tech support scams alone, and this is up 171% from the year prior. I'm going to go into a case that we got reports as an NJ Kick of how much you can actually lose in one of these scams. And then over 28,000 complaints related to COVID-19, of course. We had a lot of those. This is an example of a phishing or spear phishing email in which the hacker used a sense of urgency as well as authority. So they impersonated a legitimate security awareness training vendor, KnowBe4, and then also used the tactic of urgency, saying that this link is going to expire in 24 hours. If you don't complete this training, you will be non-compliant, and trying to scare the individual into clicking that link. This is an example of impersonating PayPal. PayPal, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon are probably the top 4 most impersonated companies through these spear phishing and phishing emails. In this case, they're requesting that the individual click the link because their payroll account might have been compromised, ironically. So if you clicked on that link, likely that would bring you to a page that looks like the login page for PayPal and would request you to enter your credentials. If you submitted those, then they would be revealed to the hacker. You probably would be rerouted to the legitimate PayPal site at that point. So the tech support scam that we have reported to us, this was December of last year. We got the incident report, and this was an after-the-fact incident. So this woman, she was in her early 70s, was contacted via a pop-up on her personal device, her laptop. It was claimed to be Microsoft Corporate Security, that her computer was locked. In order to unlock it, she had to call the fraud department. She talked to somebody who identified themselves as David Cooper. Said he was awaiting her call, and that there was a second person from Chase Bank Fraud Protection, John Walker, that also reported to the FBI. They told her this elaborate story of how her device was compromised, and they're conducting an investigation, and for her safety and to secure her funds, she needed to move her money from her account to a separate account while they conducted the investigation, and then once they were finished with the investigation, they would then put the money back into her account. It was a pretty elaborate, in my opinion, scam, considering how much time they devoted to this. They kept her up to date on the investigation. every day, and then they had told her that within 30 days she would have that money back. The day that the money was supposed to be transferred, she no longer could contact them, and she never heard from them again. It was at that point that she realized that this was likely a scam and reported it to us. Because of how long the time was between her moving her money out of her account and notifying us or realizing it was a scam, the likelihood of her getting any of her money back is slim to none at this point. She lost over $838,000 that was in her investment account. It was her retirement savings. So she won't be getting that money back in most cases. In most cases, that doesn't come back. You need to realize that you've really been scammed pretty quickly within a couple of days to have a real good chance of getting any money back. So this woman's out, over $800,000. And so I'd like to highlight this because people need to be aware that you might not personally think that you're going to be targeted. You might not be somebody that's particularly wealthy, but you might have an account just like she did where you do have quite a bit of money because you're saving up for retirement, and you could be targeted, or someone that you know could be targeted as well. So I'd like to highlight that so that we can spread the word so that people become aware of these types of threats. Phishing best practices, of course, don't give information out that's sensitive to someone that you don't know or somebody that's unverified. Don't click on links. Don't open attachments. And don't give remote access to your device. The woman in the previous case also gave remote access to her laptop to those individuals. So don't do that unless you are contacting GeekSpot or going in somewhere to a computer repair store. Do not give remote access to somebody to your device. Checking for signs of email spoofing. So in that PayPal screenshot in particular, you saw it really looked like it was from PayPal. They used email spoofing, so display name spoofing, to make it look like that's actually where that email is coming from. We have several resources available on our website. If you can't click on the link within the presentation here, they're also in the discussion notes as well. You can just do a search on our website too. Exploiting public interest, and this I just wanted to highlight pretty quickly, but as things change in the news space, the tactics that we see in these various social engineering schemes, so spear phishing, phishing emails, they also change. When COVID-19 started becoming more of an issue in the United States, so around March 18th-ish of last year, we started seeing a big spike. So you can see here a spike in the amount of phishing emails that reference COVID-19 in the subject line. What happened around that time? The CDC reported that all ages are actually impacted by COVID-19. It wasn't just the elderly like we had initially thought. And then we also surpassed 10,000 cases, which at the time was a big deal. Nothing now. But these hackers know that particularly something like this, people are interested. And if they're really interested, then they're more likely to click on a link or open an attachment in one of these phishing emails. VTC, so impersonating something like Zoom, became much more common because so many people were using these platforms now. The confirmed vaccine use. The COVID-19 vaccine phishing, we've also seen a big increase in that, mostly in 2021, I would say. Just saying, just tell us if you're willing to get the vaccine, click on this link type of thing, or we're just conducting a survey. Or they might even claim that they have access to an appointment. And, a couple of months ago, appointments were few and far between. So if you got an email like that, you might be more likely to click on that link. Achieving digital resilience. So I talked about a lot of issues and threats that we're seeing right now. So what do you do about that? Changing default credentials. I didn't mention this earlier in the presentation, but for you at home in particular, but also at your various sites, you might have security cameras, for example, or other what are called Internet of Things devices. It might include a refrigerator that's Internet connected. The HVAC system is Internet connected now. Changing the default credentials that come with those devices is vital, because if you have your Nest Cam or your refrigerator or whatever it is connected to the same Wi-Fi network as something more sensitive like a laptop, your cell phone, If they can gain access to one of those devices, it's possible that they could gain access to the other devices that are also connected to that network. So it's important to change those because the default credentials are a lot of the time available within the manual of that device. So they're available online, really. So somebody can gain access to that device that way. Enable MFA, I told you I was going to say it again. Please, if you do anything tonight or soon based on this presentation, enable multi-factor authentication or require it for whoever uses your systems. Keep hardware and software updated. That plugs vulnerabilities, plugs holes that could be exploited by these hackers. Thinking before you click on a link or open an attachment. Verifying any request for sensitive information or the transfer of money. Navigating to sites directly and not via links. This goes back to those examples that I had, either PayPal or Zoom. Don't click on the link that's included in that email. Just go to your browser and type paypal.com, zoom.us, and sign into your account that way instead of clicking the link that's in the email. This way you know you're going to the legitimate site and not to a site that's just impersonating that company. And education, maintaining awareness of these different cyber threats is one of the best things you can do really to make yourself less vulnerable. If you have that awareness of these different threats that are out there, you're going to be way less likely to fall for one of these scams. And that kind of goes back to, oops, I've had too much, to NJKIC. We have so many resources on our website. It's all free. It's cyber.nj.gov. I'll have it up at the end. And particularly the Learn section is where you can really start to bolster your understanding of cybersecurity, of these cyber threats, and hopefully then reducing your risk there and increasing your resiliency. This is what the incident reporting form looks like. You can get to it from our website. I'll actually go back real quick because I think you can see it up here. Actually, you can't. So if you go to cyber.nj.gov, up in the top right-hand corner, there is an option to report a cyber incident, and this is the form that you'll see. If you fill this form out, you'll get an email or a phone call from somebody at the NJKIC. If it's during normal business hours, we'll contact you pretty immediately. If it's after hours, next business day, unless it's an emergency. But you can report to us, and we can assist you in remediation of an incident or letting you know if something does seem suspicious, even if you're just curious, this looks suspicious, I don't know, we'll take a look. This is our cybersecurity program assessment. This is similar to what Dan had discussed with the more physical security self-assessment. This is just cybersecurity side. This is not available on our website at the moment, but if you email us, we will provide this to you. It's just a PDF. It'll highlight maybe some areas where you need to bolster some more resources to make you more secure and your organization more secure. This is how you connect with us. Like I said, cyber.nj.gov. You can become a member of the NJKIC. Becoming a member is free. What that gets you is alerts and advisories. Those might be standalone alerts and advisories. We do pass-throughs. So for CISA, if they come out with an advisory or FBI, you might get that through us. And then also the weekly bulletin, it comes out on Thursdays. That's a really good way to maintain that awareness, the education that I mentioned before, of the most current cyber threats that we're seeing. So again, it's free. Sign up for membership right on our website, and then our other contact information is up there as well. I think there's a slide after that with my personal work email. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions at all. So, and then I'll be on for the rest of the time here if you have any questions then too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krista. It's good to know that the KIC has these valuable resources for free, as cybersecurity is and can be very intimidating. I'm going to go ahead and ask some of the questions, and I'm actually going to start with a question for you, Krista. We have an attendee who said that the fraud gift card happened to that person's dad last week, and luckily he checked with them before he proceeded. The question is how aware do we report these incidents about this gift card fraud?
So yeah, right on our website, if you can report it there, you can even attach an image of what that email looked like, or if it was, if you come across one of those text messages, any of that, you can put in an image of that, detail what the incident was. If you need assistance or if you're just doing it to let us know. And we want those too. Even if you don't need assistance, we want to know what kind of threats are out there because that allows us to better inform our members and the public of the current cyber threats that we're all seeing. So by you sharing that information with us and us sharing it out, we might prevent somebody else from becoming a victim too.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The next question I do believe will be directed to Izzy and or Dan Schultz. The question is, how do you schedule an assessment and who do you contact to start this process?
Sure. Hey, Loretta, when you get the chance, can you put my contact information up? So there's several ways you can conduct a assessment. If you reach out to me, I will be more than happy to coordinate it. So it varies depending on the county that your organization is originally from. So the UASC has a set of risk mitigation planners that work with the local police department as well as our office and DHS to have these assessments done. But if you reach out directly to me, in this case, if you're in Bergen County, for example, the RMP would be Billy Stallone. So I can certainly coordinate that information. You can either reach out to me through my email, echaudhry@njohsp.gov, or our ohspinterfaith.gov, njohsp.gov website, and I'll be more than happy to coordinate that with you.
Thanks, Izzy. We also have another question inquiring about how to get on the mailing list for the Interfaith Advisory Council.
Great question. So all you have to do is go on to njhomelandsecurity.gov, click on the Interfaith tab. It is actually right in the beginning of the page that's dedicated to interfaith resources. Click on Become a Member. Click to register. That information actually comes directly to me. I'll review it, and based on that, I'll certainly will probably approve that.
Thanks again. We have another question about how to get notifications about when the grants are open. We also have another one that talked about that they check the website. I know, Izzy, that you mentioned that it's a good idea to continue to check the website so that people can be informed of when the next grant cycle will be open. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
Thanks, Lauren. Absolutely great question. So first of all, the best way to get information related to both grants is through our website, and particularly the Interfaith Advisory Council email distribution. So we're very proactive in terms of providing that information to the interfaith community. Not only do we do it through our distribution with the IAC distribution email, we also have Facebook as well as Twitter, and we push that information out as quick as possible. Now, related to the NSGP question, yes. So the original announcement related to the NSGP, again, which is a federal grant administered by FEMA, that announcement comes from FEMA. Now, generally speaking, and I'm saying very, very much generally speaking, that usually is announced during the early part of the year, January, February or so. And then it usually opens around March and closes around April. So that is a very, very general statement in the sense that that's usually when it happens. That doesn't mean that that always happens that way. Now, going back to the question related to the security assessments, it's very important not to wait to the last minute to do the security assessments and also to do the grant. So when you go on our website and go down to the section where it provides information related to the NSGP as well as the NJNSGP, if you click on that, it'll take you to our office's grant bureau. Our grant bureau provides actual videos how to conduct the application process. It's about a 15-minute video for both, and it goes through the process of what you need to do in terms of actually doing the application. Second point I wanted to make was that don't wait till the last minute to start doing the assessment and also the application process. So if you can actually download the investment justification, which is the application process, and go through it prior to the grant application itself. This allows to give you time to go through it, review it, redo it, and it's very important how you actually write the grant. So take the time. Don't wait to the last minute where you only have a window of about 30 days or so to provide that investment justification, which is the application for both the NSGP and the NJ-NSGP. Get ahead of the game. Try to work on that. It doesn't change much between the years, so you can actually take in and review those process before you file for that application.
Thank you so much, Izzy. I have a couple other questions for you. We have someone that was inquiring about your contact information. I wanted to let everyone know that right now we have our contact page up. It has all the presenters' information on here. So that's the answer for that question. There was another question that inquired about if OHSP or I guess DHS is consulting with facilities anymore. So I'll present that to you, Izzy, and if Dan wanted to chime in, you can as well.
Absolutely, and Dan and I have done that previously, so I'd be more than happy to answer, and obviously Dan can chime in anytime. So when we, whether at the state level or at the federal level, do any type of assessment, it's not necessarily, everything that's out there. It's tailor-made to your organization. So if you just need an assessment and don't want to apply for the grant, totally fine. If you're looking to do the grant, other projects, whether FEMA or DHS can provide or our office can provide, we'd be more than happy to do that. So going back to the assessment portion, it's very much a collective effort. So whether you do it, DHS, our office, state police, county, or local, we'll work and we'll coordinate with you to get that assessment done.
Thank you very much. We have a question about how can we find out more about the grants, and I'm assuming is the same website that you have been referencing, the NJ Homeland Security.gov/interface.
Thank you, Loretta. So if you go onto our website, njhomelandsecurity.gov, click on the Interface tab. If you scroll down where it says Community Resources, and the subtitle to that is Grant Opportunities, you just click on whether, either the non-security grant program, the NSGP, the federal grant, or the NJ-NSGP, the state grant. You click on that. That automatically takes you to detailed information related to individual grants. So just click on either one of them. It provides you all the information written on the website, but additionally, it has videos on both of them in the process of applying for those grants.
Thank you so much, Izzy. The next couple questions will go for Joanne Lowry. There is a question wanting to know the criteria for the Be Ready program.
I'm so sorry. Could you repeat the Be Ready?
They have Be Read on here, so I'm assuming it's one of the programs you referenced, Joanne.
Allison, can you help me out here? I'm looking for the question on the chat board.
Yeah, I'm also not familiar with that program, so I think maybe they just misinterpreted something that was said on the screen.
No worries.
Or during the presentation.
No worries.
If somebody wants to clarify, I'll certainly give that question an answer.
Dan, did you have anything that was referencing that? If not, we can most certainly move on.
Yep. No, I'm not familiar with the bread program.
Okay.
I'll stand by.
Okay. Izzy, we have a question where someone asked, are all assessments good for 3 years?
Yes, actually the prosecutor had pointed this out earlier. All the assessments are good for 3 years, and so that is the basic requirement. Now, you do not have to have a physical assessment conducted by DHS, our office, state police, county, local. We have two methods that we're accepting at the moment. One is our facility assessment tool, which, by the way, we will be transitioning into that DHS CISA tool that Dan spoke of earlier. That is the minimum requirement. So long as you do the self-assessment tool, that is adequate towards the grant application process. Now, there is no difference whether you do the self-assessment tool or you have an actual physical assessment. The benefits of having that physical assessment tool is actually having professionals come in and look it through your organization facility. I can assure you that all the people that I have worked with, including Dan Schultz, are extraordinarily professional. They're certified. We provide a professional security perspective that certainly, and no offense to anyone else, we're looking at in a different perspective that we can provide to you. And again, all the types of resources that we've indicated today are free of charge. So there's no charge for any of these assessments. So if you do want a physical assessment, which I highly recommend doing, would probably be more preferable, especially for your self-edification as opposed to the self-assessment. So yes, to answer the question regarding the 3-year rule, that is correct.
Hey, Izzy, this is Dan. I just wanted to follow up on that dovetail. I think it's important as you build these assessments, if you've had one already completed, and even if it's only a year old and you've done a lot, perhaps it's time to reassess and see what's going on. And that will help to also show value when you write your investment justification or your grant application. You can say how we did first assessment A, and from that we moved in this direction, we solved these problems, and now we're back. Now we're applying for a grant because of number C, or the next evolution. These are all important as the grant reviewers take a hard look at these. They just don't want to see somebody looking to, I always like to say, protect their facility with a bunch of money. What it is we want to understand that you have a process in place that helps to improve your score, not just here in the state, but also when those are forwarded up to the federal side. And that's it's really important to take that into account, and also to foot stomp on what Izzy was saying earlier. Now's the time between the resources that are available here in the state to get out there and just even a walkthrough to give you the heads up to help you start that security planning mission. How do you form a team? Just those little things. It could be more than the assessment, but we can help coach you up between Izzy, myself, risk mitigation planners that are out there across the board. It works out pretty good. Oh, and we'll stop on that.
Thank you so much, Dan. We are about to wrap up. So, Allison, if I can get you to highlight the slide that talks about FEMA's upcoming webinars and trainings. I'm going to go directly into the last question, which I think is important, which was how can we access this webinar after today? I want to let everyone know that tonight's seminar was recorded, and you all will be sent a link with the recording. It will be uploaded on the website in about 2 weeks. If you see the slide now, you can look at the link for any upcoming webinars for FEMA. And I would like to thank everyone for joining us this evening. We hope that you all were able to capture the many resources and information offered tonight. I hope you were able to get our contact information. Feel free to reach out to any of the presenters if you have follow-up questions. I would like to thank our Acting Deputy Director, Eric Sasarzik, for your leadership and opening remarks. Also, I would like to thank the Bergen County Prosecutor, Mark Musella, for joining us tonight. As mentioned earlier, we always enjoy our working relationship with your office. We would like to also thank our partners, DHS, and a very special thank you to FEMA, and a very special shout out to Allison, who graciously navigates this this platform for us. Thank you for your partnership and hosting this seminar with us tonight. And before we close out, I would like to bring your attention to the Resources tab, where we have many links, and then included in that tab is NJOHSP's See Something, Say Something campaign, encouraging everyone to report terrorism-related suspicious activity. So check that out when you can, and keep your eyes and ears open for upcoming trainings and webinars, as NJOHSP and FEMA is always advertising new virtual-led training, as well as DHS. And everyone, please be safe, enjoy the rest of your night, and feel free to disconnect.